bringing the ambulance out, code blue.
Oh, yeah?
From Weatherford, Oklahoma. And there we go. From Weatherford, Oklahoma, this is Midwest Sports Saturday, and it's live. Hi, I'm Joey McWilliams, and it is a privilege, as always, to get to be here with you on our YouTube channel and bringing you small college athletics throughout the six-state region of the Midwest in Oklahoma and Arkansas, in Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and Iowa. And we are here on site for the GAC Women's Soccer Championship, the 2019 edition, and I am joined right now by Coach Mark Persson, the head coach of the Southwestern Lady Bulldogs, whose team is in the championship game again for the fifth consecutive time. Man, my goodness, Coach, to talk about the fact that you all produce a winning program here, and I'm sure that has to go a long way toward recruiting as well. But to talk about the consistency here really is an understatement, because you find yourself in a championship game now 5 consecutive years.
Right. Well, it speaks to the commitment of the girls that we have in our program. It is obviously a part of our recruiting. We're going to tell them, hey, if you want to come play in big games, this is a good place to come. I think 7 out of the last 8 years we've been in the conference finals. We've won quite a few of them. But it really comes down to the commitment of the players to work hard, to commit to each other, and also commit to the coaching and what we're asking them to do. And we played a lot of different styles over those years, So it's exciting to be back again. And one of these teams is going to go on and play in the national tournament.
Play an NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, listen, talk about that for just a moment, because that's something. It's different in college than it is in the pros. I was thinking about this yesterday and thinking about a couple of my favorite NBA teams. I like the Thunder, and I'm happy as a resident of Oklahoma. I always said if we ever got a team, I would cheer for that team. And it's been fun to cheer for the Thunder, different teams along the way. But anymore on the professional level, with the changes from year to year, sometimes you may just be cheering for laundry. It's really not the case in college athletics as much,
right? And
especially not on the Division II level. But still, with this being your 5th consecutive time to be in the championship game, it's a totally different team than it was 4 years ago.
Yes. Well, I mean, I would say in soccer, women's soccer in particular, we don't end up with a lot of transfers. So most of our kids are going to come in freshmen all the way through their senior year. So they'll be in the program for 4 years. We start 8 freshmen on this team.
Wow.
We brought in 17 freshmen. So it's a very young team. None of these girls were here for the past 3 or 4. We have 3 seniors on the team, right. So this is their 4th in a row that they'll play in.
They don't know anything any different.
They don't know anything different. That's what they expect, and hopefully that wears off on the young kids. And Oklahoma Baptist is similar. This is the 3rd that they'll be playing in. That's when we set our goal at the beginning of the year. It's always, hey, win the conference tournament. We don't talk about national tournament. We don't talk about that other stuff. It's to say that we got to win our league, win the league and the tournament, and then that'll get us into the national tournament, and we can see what happens after that. So, we're the only team that has advanced and won games in the national tournament out of our conference, but. The difficult thing in our conference is that we don't get to play the Northern Sun teams very much, even the MIAA, to be honest, a lot. So for our best team to get to the national tournament and be able to compete with those teams and show them how good we are, we've gone up and played the Northern Sun, the best team in the Northern Sun, and beat them. At their host site, Mankato. We played Minot State when they won their tournament. The first year we went, and we beat them 3-0, I think. So I think it's great for the other conferences in our region to understand, the level of teams that we have at the top of our league, for sure.
It is a good league, Great American Conference, and the championship being held here behind me today in, less than 2 hours. So, Coach, I really appreciate you taking time with us today on Midwest Sports Saturday, which is presented this week by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. And, Coach, if you are starting that many freshmen, then 3 years from now, we could be saying these are some similar names now, new names now for us to get to call in the broadcast booth that we haven't called before. One of them, though, however, is very familiar, and I get used to saying Sandra. That's what I get used to saying.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Nabuatame.
Yeah. Yeah, something like that.
I had to practice on that 3 years ago,
Yeah.
4 years ago, and I think I've gotten a little bit better at it now.
Yeah, no, she's one of our 3 seniors, and obviously she's been a key offensive threat for us for 4 years now. I think she's got 20 goals on the season, maybe this year again, pretty consistent.
She's always at the top of the list in the NCAA,
Yeah.
not just in the conferences. She is the leading goal scorer in the conference. And by the way, Coach, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yep.
Offensive Player of the Year again, and unanimously so, but rightfully so. She leads the league in goals scored, and she's always in the NCAA lists.
Right. In the past, her first 3 years, her and Ali were our top scorers. They kind of played off of each other this year. She's kind of carried that load herself. Again, when she decides she really wants to play, like she's a handful, and so we're hoping that Sandra shows up today for the game.
Well, she gets some help by one of those freshmen, though, as you have a newcomer that's making noise in the Great American Conference and second on the team in your offense in Brenna McGurk.
Yeah. Well, again, we look different than we did last year. Obviously, Ali was such a threat up top, running off the back line, and so the goals are spread around a little bit more. Brenna has really done a good job for us. She plays great back to goal. She's a strong player for as big and strong of an athlete as she is. She has a great touch. She can strike the ball with her right or left foot equally well, and so she's done a great job as a freshman, along with the other girls that are playing in the midfield for us that have created assists and goals. The past 2 or 3 years, we haven't got many goals or assists out of our midfield players, so it's been nice to have that. And we have a different look. They can't just concentrate on 1 or 2 particular players. We can do well at in different positions, and so hopefully from one of those positions we'll score today. Hopefully.
Now, okay, let's talk about that for just a moment as we talk with Coach Mark Persson from Southwestern here. You need to score today against an Oklahoma Baptist team that comes in, and again, this is the 3rd consecutive time that you all are meeting for the conference championship. Now, the last 2 years it was in Shawnee.
Correct.
This year you all get to play this game in Weatherford. Talk about a couple of things. First off, does it make a difference having a home field advantage, if that is a thing at this point in time and in a championship game? And how big is it really then to score today? Because in the previous 2 matches against Oklahoma Baptist, it was a 1-0 loss, which is the last match that you all lost so far this season. That was a long time ago. And then a scoreless draw to conclude the regular season. So how big are points today? But talk about this home field advantage. Is there such a thing?
Well, I think there is a home field advantage, but at the end of the day, the game is going to be won or lost on the field, not in what bed you slept in last night. I think it is good for our girls to be able to be in their regular routine, sleeping in their own beds, being in front of our home crowd. We'll have a lot more fans out here than we did down at Oklahoma Baptist the last couple of years. So all of those things I think are an advantage, but really it comes down to what happens on the field. We played to a draw with them the last time we played. With our 2 teams, I told Mike after the game I would have never expected us to end in a 0-0 draw. There's just great offensive players on both sides of the ball. They've got a very mature defense.
Mm-hmm.
They've got juniors and seniors that have played a lot across their back line, and it's a strong back line. So that's the matchups that we have. Can Sandra and our younger players crack that code to find something? So we'll see. It's exciting. I told the girls, hey, like what better thing to play in games like this? Both teams should be excited about playing, and it would be disappointing for one team obviously at the end of the day, but playing in these big games is why we all do this.
That's exactly right. Well, Coach, then as we look, it's a little bit chillier here, and I'm going to have to work on, I think, a more industrial size heater. It wasn't that long ago we were doing Midwest Sports Saturday, and people were almost dropping because of the heat. That's a totally different story in the last couple times we've been outside here. So we're going to have to work on something about that. Oklahoma Baptist brings a very good fan base with them to the last couple of championships. I want to see how well they travel today, and will the cold make a difference, not only with the fans coming out, but it is a bit chilly here today. Does that make a difference to your gameplay?
I don't think so. I mean, this time of year, you get kind of different kinds of weather, and I think we're pretty used to it. We played in extremely cold weather, much worse than this. The sun is shining today. It's not too windy. I think all of those things are going to lead to a good game. Hopefully we'll have a great crowd out here from both sides. We've had most of these conference championships have been in the state of Oklahoma. I think there's been a couple over there at Harding, but all the rest have been on this side of the state or on this side of the conference. So hopefully it makes it easier for fans to get out and be a part of this game live.
I was at one of the conference championships that was at Harding, and that was a field that I believe was underwater at that point in time. You all were playing in that one. So totally different scenario today. And the sun right up over there, it definitely is giving us some good natural lighting today. But that does make a difference, too, with sun's out. Even if it's chilly, that'll bring a little bit of warmth to that. Well, Coach, thank you very much for taking time with us today. Success to you all, and looking forward to a good call and a good match today, and the winner with an automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. Coach Mark Persson from Southwestern. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm going to let him go ahead then and move on because, he has some things to do today, so got to get some business taken care of. We are at the Southwestern Athletic Complex here in Weatherford, Oklahoma, and this is Midwest Sports Saturday presented by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. Seated next to me now is somebody with whom I really could not do without. On any level, from oklahomasports.net, midwestsports.net, the YouTube channel, and pretty much everything we do, the sports information director, the assistant athletic director for media relations, Doug Self. Doug, man, thank you so much for sitting in with me this morning.
Yeah, Joey, I'm glad to have you back in Weatherford. Second time this year, so we're glad to have you back. We're glad to have the soccer championship back at the athletic complex here.
It's a great facility. Now, let's talk a little bit about Southwestern now. Of course, I know you know a thing or two about the athletic department here.
A couple things.
When did you get here? 2012?
January of 2013.
2013, okay. Yeah.
So 7 years ago, around this time, is when I had applied, and I think I interviewed the week before Thanksgiving and, accepted the job around Thanksgiving, and then got here January 3rd of that year and been off and running ever since.
oklahomasports.net had not been around that long at that point in time as we officially went online in 2011, but really starting to reach out and get into the state, and you were one of the first people that I really got to know and become acquainted with over the phone a lot, and then getting to come up here. Weatherford is just such a great place, and we have the soccer pitch behind us here, but also there is the baseball field, the softball field behind us a little bit more as part of this athletic complex, and it really is a nice place out here.
Yeah, and just in the amount of time that I've been here, it's changed significantly. When they hosted it in 2012 before I got here. That was the year Coach Persson had the undefeated regular season team. But in 2013 we hosted, and at that time, the press box, which is over here to our left, was just a concrete slab. And there's a great photo in my office of the SWASU won the championship that day, and the girls dumped Gatorade on Coach Persson, and it was on that concrete slab, which had nothing on it at the point. In which, think about that, you get something like that wet this time of year, it gets pretty slick. And Coach Persson, trying to run away, he slipped in the Gatorade.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, and he got doused pretty good that day. But
man.
it has, a lot of the stuff around here has continued to be improved. Ever since then, they've put up the fence out here. They've kind of reseeded the grass. It doesn't, it's kind of dormant at the moment, but they've got it. They're preparing for the future with that, and baseball and softball every year. They shout out to old Coach Zach Saunders of the baseball team. He kind of is the maintenance guru out here when it comes to grass and stuff like that. He's constantly making improvements, and our stuff's just getting a little better every year.
Well, it is good, but all the facilities themselves, which are great. Of course, we were in the Pioneer Cellular Event Center. Well, that was just 3 weeks ago.
It was.
We were up there getting to watch, preparing for a volleyball match, and then, of course, football. It was homecoming, the parade. We had the mass band, got to see that. There was a Haley Tucker sighting. I mean, that was a really big day at Southwestern. But with all of the great facilities that you all have, and I mean, really, like you said, it's just within the past, since you've been here, some of the improvements that have been made, the players themselves, the teams themselves have really shown themselves to be of quality. And, you don't have to look that far, but to see behind us a team that's going to be playing for the fifth time in a championship match, and we've talked almost ad infinitum about the women's basketball program, and there's a big game on hand tonight in Lubbock, not here, down the road in Lubbock.
Yeah, it's a busy day all around. We've got stuff going on here. We've got football ends up with the rivalry up at Northwestern, but the game that I think everybody wishes was on our campus this year is the national championship rematch down at Lubbock Christian tonight. Lubbock's won over 60 consecutive games on their home court, and our Lady Bulldogs are off to a 3-0 start with some really good regional wins. But this will be a different test. Obviously, we've got a D1 win under our belt too. But Lubbock Christian is, it still stings. Everybody still feels the way that game ended, and we beat them in a great game at our place at the event center last year. So it's become a nice little Division II regional rivalry, even though we're technically not in the same region. We're close enough that we're still able to play each other, and we've played some really good games the last few years, and I would expect tonight's to be another one of those.
I would imagine that. Well, this is a Southwestern women's basketball team that's already made a little bit of noise this season, going down the road to Tulsa, and in an exhibition game, but still taking out Division I Tulsa, 3-point win there.
I tell you what, that was a very fun game because Tulsa led for the majority of the game. The Lady Dogs didn't take the lead until the final minute, but there's just something about this team that it's that finding a way to win. Didn't play their best that night, but we down the last 5 or 6 minutes, the defense really clamped down, and Bethany Franks, is one of the 3 starters back from last year, and she was, the MVP of the GAC tournament last year and all tournament team at the Elite Eight. She hit a 3. That's your power forward center stepping out and hitting a 3, and she did the same thing when we were up at Pitt State last week. She hit a 3 with about 12 seconds to go to put us ahead. They keep finding ways to win games, and they'll put that to the test again tonight.
I think about Southwestern, and it's always going to be an offensive thought.
Yeah.
Until this past year, when Coach Music really, put that defense in, that chaotic defense in. And, it takes you to a national championship game is pretty much what it does. But still, you think about players like Bethany Franks and what she can do on the inside. And you talked about her, being a post player. Her solid play and what I consider when I think about her is not stepping out behind the arc, and yet this is something that it's like anyone who puts on a Lady Bulldogs jersey has the ability to do.
And I think the reason you'd say something like that is just her freshman and sophomore year, she just was never asked to do that.
That's true.
Her role was to maybe set some screens, get open in the lane, maybe occasionally step out to the free throw line and hit a jumper if need be. But that's what to hear the coaches say. She's always had that range. You had other people that could do other things, and she would just fill her role. And so now, without the 4,000-point combination of Haley Tucker and Hayden Pretty, someone else is going to have to step in and score a basket now and then. And she's perfectly capable. But there's some new names emerging already. Maddie Spurley's already scored over 20 points in each of the last 2 games. Lauren Ramey, who was saw a few minutes here and there last year, scored 26 in the opener and didn't miss a shot. One name that you're really going to need to learn is Makaira Tramble from Shawnee, Oklahoma. She's a freshman, and she led the way in her first exhibition, had a big game at Tulsa as well, and she scored over 20 in 2 straight games. So there's still people out there capable of scoring. Coach Music's always going to be able to do. It looks a little different, but the end result, they're still putting up points. They're still forcing turnovers, playing good defense, and, playing quality basketball.
You talk about Coach Music then, and she's going to have the players to do that. But when you can recruit now like she can recruit, and Coach Music is no stranger to the western part of the state of Oklahoma. And again, this year, if you look at the Southwestern roster, and here on the campus at Weatherford, on the campus of Southwest, I think we're a little north of the campus proper, but an extension of the campus as I'm visiting with Doug Self, the SID here at Southwestern on Midwest Sports Saturday, which is presented by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. I want to make sure I get all of that in one sentence if it's at all possible. But you think about what she can do. I would imagine Coach Music could pretty much walk into any high school, really in the state of Oklahoma, but any high school specifically west of I-35 and be able to say, would you like to come? And, come on down to Weatherford.
And she's had success, with those type of kids that maybe they're say under-recruited or just not seen as much. They might not get recruited as much because no one knows them, but she knows a high school coach that either coaches them or has coached against them and saw them at a tournament. And, it's impressive to see the way that she puts together a roster, because there's sometimes where, someone will come in, they'll struggle for a year or two to kind of figure everything out, and then the light bulb goes on, and it's something that she, Coach Music can see that. She can see the potential that a player may have and where their skill set fits exactly inside that offense, and she can put those pieces together, and doing it with the local kids is it's made for a great home court advantage here at the event center because it brings more people to our home games. But it's so fun to see it come together, and even now when it's a completely different style of roster, it's fun to watch them put it together, and they're still running the same offense, but they do it a little differently.
And you know what you're going to get when you watch a Southwestern game. And I talk to coaches on a regular basis, and coaches they'll have a book on a team. You compile that book over seasons, specifically with one coach that's been there for a while. And there's no doubt, there's no question when you watch a Southwestern women's basketball team, you're going to get the dribble drive.
You're going to get the dribble drive. You're going to get they're going to find ways to get open three-pointers, and then, that's what a lot of teams will try and do is run them off the three-point line. But then, she's got people that can get to the basket as well and finish, or, they move the ball so well. That's the thing, is the ball never sticks in that offense. And, you can always say that it's our goal to take away one certain thing, but, they always find a way. There's always a counter, and that's where the full court press comes in too, is because, if they can't get set up against it, or you get a steal and you get breakaways and get easy points, then it just becomes that much easier to score.
Anybody can do it. Let me go back really quickly and just mention this again. You talked about Bethany Franks. I didn't think about a three-point range really for her, but the thing that stands out to me, and while we've gone from soccer to a lot of basketball here, but it is basketball season right now. We've really officially turned the corner. One more weekend of football in the regular season, and we will talk about that in just a moment too. But Bethany Franks, she has that mid-range jumper. You talked about her being able to step up to the free throw line, and really anywhere between 10 and 16 or 17 feet where she can just turn and fire and drain it. I would still say it could be a lost art. It may not be a lost art, but it has a tendency to feel like a lost art because everyone either wants the layup in men's basketball, the dunk, or the three-point shot. And the three-point line, 20, 23 feet, 25 feet, wherever you want to, fire from. But you have somebody like a Bethany Franks that can turn and make that mid-range jumper. That is a totally different weapon.
And you could argue that weapon is what won SWASU the Great American Conference Tournament last year.
I think so.
Because, we went into that tournament with, 3 first-team all-conference players. And, Bethany was kind of the one that I think teams decided that they're going to live with her beating them with that little jump shot. They were going to try and take away the threes, take away, Hayden Pretty on her drives and, kicking it back out for a three. And what that left was Bethany Franks open and, in the lane or just outside for a lot of short jump shots. And she got to the point where she could knock that shot down, which led to some pump fakes and drives. And, she was the best player on the floor that weekend in Bartlesville. And, rightfully so. She brought home the MVP honors. And that's what you said. When you have that many weapons at all 5 positions, pick your poison, and most times team were willing to live with that, and they still beat them with it. When
you lose 2 All-Americans like a Haley Tucker and a Hayden Pretty from Southwestern's team, but you still return 3 starters, that's the thing that I think also that stands out to me about this year's team. There are 3 starters returning. There was so much attention last year on Tucker and Pretty, and rightfully so. I don't know that you could give them too much attention, but there was a lot there, rightfully so. But there are so many players that are coming back, and names like even in the NCAA tournament, Tabor Beer with the 3-pointer to win the game over Central Missouri. How big is that? She's etched her name in the Southwestern lore as well.
Yeah, and it's more than just those 3 starters. Is all 5 people in the starting lineup right now. You add Tabor Beer and Maddie Spurley to that, and all 5 starters have been in the program for at least 2 years.
Yeah.
So, yes, those 2 didn't start last year, but, Tabor played plenty of closing minutes. Maddie Spurley played plenty of closing minutes. So, all 5 starters return to the team, and they have significant playing experience. And then, 3 or 4 of the freshmen who have been brought in are contributing at a high rate already. So, I don't know. I'm excited to see once we get tonight's game, obviously. Playing a team of that caliber on their home court, you learn a lot. They already got 1 big road win at Pitt State last Saturday and a win at Tulsa. So it's just another challenge and a step that should prepare the Lady Bulldogs for conference play, which starts Thursday already. Can you believe that?
Thursday, that's right. Thursday, November 21st. Well, behind us you can see soccer players coming in now, and we are on site at the GAC. women's soccer championship match. It's going to take place here at Southwestern. Oklahoma Baptist coming in conference play, having won 8 matches, lost 3, tied 1. Southwestern gets the regular season championship, having won 8 matches, lost 1, tied 3. So the percentage points give the regular season championship to Southwestern, top seed in the tournament. And so that's why we're here at Weatherford here, Midwest Sports Saturday, presented today by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. And Doug, I have you for a little while longer here, and we'll wrap things up and do some soccer. By the way, special programming note for tomorrow. This is going to be live tomorrow, Midwest Sports Saturday, for the first time on a Sunday. And for the second time from the state of Kansas, this is going to be the farthest north that we've been able to take Midwest Sports Saturday so far. Obviously, we're going to be in Missouri, Nebraska, and Iowa very soon. But we'll be in Hays, Kansas tomorrow, a special edition of the program on Sunday from Fort Hays State. That will be the site of the GAC Men's Soccer Championship. Rogers State taking on Fort Hays State in Hays, Kansas. And it will be back to an 11 o'clock start time for that on the live stream.
And you're going to a place that's very near and dear to my heart, Joey.
That's right.
As a proud graduate of Fort Hays State University, there's been a lot of good things have changed around there since I guess now 7 years since I've been gone from there. But that soccer, it's crazy to see how far they've come as a soccer program, because my last year as a graduate assistant was the first year that they sponsored men's and women's soccer. And since then, the men have been a consistent team in the regional. The women's soccer team has been to the tournament, I think, multiple times. I know they won at least one MIAA championship up there, and it's crazy to see something like that take off in the span of less than a decade. Now it's, their men were in the Final Four last year and lost in penalty kicks. So
that's another thing too. Is let's just step on that for just a moment. It's interesting to talk about those names. Of course, you obviously an alum from Fort Hays State. It's not anything at all for you to talk about that. But to talk about that in relation to the Great American Conference, those are some new names. 4 teams that combined with 4 teams that were already in the GAC, combining to make, a conference. The MIAA, in essence, sent 4 teams to the GAC in men's soccer. The GAC, in essence, sent 4 teams to the MIAA in men's tennis, and the reason for that was because you needed scheduling, and now an automatic bid's on the line. With 4 teams in a conference, your conference tournament doesn't get an automatic bid. Now with 8 teams in the conference, then the winner tomorrow, that makes a difference in tomorrow's championship game. Yeah,
that's significant, because you want to get to the point this time of year where all those games you're playing for something. And I remember I talked about that 2013 championship game where SWOSU won that soccer match here at the athletic complex and didn't get an automatic bid because the league, they have that probationary period for whatever it is, 4 or 5 years.
It was 3 years then. I think it's 5 years now, but it was 3 years then. But that's just 2 years in, 3 years in.
Yeah, and I mean that was a very talented soccer team that was putting it on the line. They I think they only had 1 loss in conference play, but without an automatic bid, just didn't have the strength of schedule or whatever criteria they didn't meet to fit into that top 6. So with these games now, it's exciting, even though neither one of these 2 teams has been in the regional rankings yet, but both of them are playing for a spot in the big dance. And I think you want to get to that point where these November games, they mean something. And that's, yes, you're playing for that trophy, but also the opportunity to play on, that's something that these kids, they come to college dreaming of, that is playing in the NCAA tournament.
That's right. They want to play on, always wanting to fight on. Well, with Doug Self right now, I'm Joey McWilliams here on Midwest Sports Saturday, which is presented by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. And let me lean over here. I had one piece of paper, if I can hold on to it here and not just lose the entire broadcast, one piece of paper that I had with me because I knew I was going to be in Weatherford today where the wind comes sweeping down the plain, and I didn't want all of my notes to wind up in Alva. We may actually stop by Alva a little bit later on. That transitions us over to football talk right now because it's a Saturday, mid-November Saturday. Of course, we have to talk about football, and it's the final week of the regular season in Division II in NAIA. There are some huge games that are taking place today in the MidwestSports.net regional footprint. And what I have here is a note of Division II games and the longest running series. And some of these come from this Midwest region. Of course, the longest running series in between Division II teams, 134 previous meetings between South Dakota Mines and Black Hill State. Can you imagine that? First game in 1895. That is incredible.
Yeah, I don't remember that game. It's funny to talk about that. Is I've been watching the
what kind of a sports information director are you if you don't remember that?
I've been watching the Saturdays in the South documentary, and they're it's the 150th year overall of college football, and they show some of the stuff leading back to those games, and it was just it's crazy to look back and see how far the sport has come. And I know that's 134 years; it's a long time, but that's it's amazing to see what the sport has evolved into based on where it started.
Okay, well, second here on this list is from your home state.
That is.
Emporia State and Washburn. 116 meetings prior to this year. 1899 was when the first meeting.
I can proudly say I've been to one of those games. My senior year of high school, 2004, we went and, our high school football team, Washburn's just up the road from my hometown. We went and watched the game. Honestly, I couldn't tell you who won that day, but I do remember, and I can say that I've been to a game in that rivalry.
Okay, 5 teams on this list have played at least 100 times, and one of them is, something very close to me. Actually, I live in Durant. One of my degrees is from Southeastern, so I'm a savage. I'm savage. I'm old enough to be a savage.
Yeah.
I go back a little bit farther. But anyway, Southeastern and East Central, the Great American Classic, getting ready to take place today. It will be in Durant, and I have been to a number of those games. I won't be there today. Obviously, we'll be up here.
The Great American Classic and the Great American Conference.
That's exactly right.
Incredible.
It's that's some good marketing. They should do something with that.
It is.
Find a way to brand that. Southeastern has taken a lead in the series in recent years, having won 50. East Central's won 46, and there have been 8 ties. This game began, or the series began in this game began. There have been some really long games. The series began in 1909, and that was the first year, I believe, for both those universities, too, state colleges in Oklahoma. So this will be the 105th meeting, 5th most played series in the country in Division II. That's incredible.
Yeah, it is, and I'm sure these are some of the regional or the Russo teams, have all stayed in the same conference, and they've, I know when I look back at our year-by-year history, we've played Southeastern and East Central every year since the end of World War II, and I'm sure they've probably played each other in every season that football's been played, probably almost since 1907.
Yeah, just the couple of gaps in there with the war.
Yeah.
And that really was about it. Well, there are 4 more teams on the list that I have in front of me, and one of those, well, I'll list a couple of them, a couple more in here. The 98 times Pitt State and Emporia State have played, so Emporia State on this list twice already. And then 97 times, this is over in Missouri, Truman and Central Missouri have played. We'll talk about UCM again here in just a moment. Then this will be the 93rd meeting today of the Battle of the Ravine. That is a huge matchup in which these universities are right across the street from one another. Their football stadiums are right across the street from one another. We were in Arkadelphia with Midwest Sports Saturday a little bit earlier this year. That was in late September, early October. We had an opportunity to get to see Henderson State play, took on Northwestern, came away with a huge win in that game, got to interview Kevin Rogers, the most prolific passing quarterback in Arkansas college football history, all levels of play. It will be Henderson State with 1 loss, 9-1 coming in, taking on Oklahoma Baptist, soccer, sorry, Ouachita Baptist. I'm used to just calling them Ouachita now. Ouachita Baptist, and it just does not get any closer than this, Doug. 93rd meeting. In 92 previous meetings, the series is tied at 43, 43, and 6.
I saw that stat. I was reading a story the other day, previewing that game, and yeah, I mean, it doesn't, a lot of times with these rivalries, you'll get those ones where it's like a media guide rivalry where one team has the record as such, one has the other, has theirs team with the advantage. Not with this one. They are split down the middle with the same amount of ties, same amount of wins. And it doesn't get much bigger than the game they're going to play today.
I mentioned Henderson State at 9-1. I neglected to mention Ouachita at 10-0.
Yeah.
Playing for a third. As a matter of fact, it's already clinched a share of the conference title. This will be the 3rd straight for Ouachita in the Great American Conference. 10-0, Henderson State at 9-1. And, you say throw out the records, which you can't throw out 43, 43, and 6. I'm sorry. You just don't throw that out. Shows how even things are. But the 9-1 and the 10-0, these two teams are going to fight to the finish if they both came in 0-10.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much on the line in this game because you look at.
Yeah, they're not 0-10.
Yeah, but you look at these. Yeah, they're not only is Ouachita, they've clinched that, at least a share of the championship. But if they get beat today, there's a legit possibility they could still miss the playoffs with a 3-way tie in the conference. You just don't know how the numbers would shake out in the.
It would be interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think and of course, you know more than I do. You're on this level, and you get to work with some of these playoff things. Let's look at the regional rankings really quickly. Let's talk about that then. With 3 teams in the Great American Conference in the regional rankings in Super Region 3, Ouachita, undefeated at 10-0, is number 3. Harding is at 9-1 and number 4, and Harding's only loss is to Ouachita.
Mm-hmm.
And Henderson State is 9-1 and at number 7. The top 7 teams will make it to the regional playoffs.
Yep.
Henderson State has to win.
Yeah.
There's no way around that. Henderson State, in order to be in, has to win. And I think even if the teams below Henderson State lose, I still say the Reddies have to win this to be in the playoffs. Now, there could be postseason ahead one way or the other with the Live United Bowl or other opportunities to play in a Division II bowl game. I think Ouachita may still be in.
You would like to think so?
I would, yeah.
From the conference standpoint, that would be a great opportunity if they were able to get 3 teams in, but it's one of those things. I'm sure Coach Knight at Ouachita is preaching. There's no guarantees at this point other than to go out and take care of your business on the field and, secure it, most definitely.
A couple of other teams that are playing with some big implications on the line. Of course, the Battle of the Ravine is the big one in the Great American Conference. In the MIAA, up the road, it is Northwest Missouri taking on Central Missouri, and that is a huge matchup as well. Northwest Missouri, by the way, just crossed the threshold of 600 wins in program history, so there had been only 6 other teams prior to that in Division II that had 600 wins. So Northwest Missouri, a team that has just been so dominant in the last decade, in the Bearcats, looking to get back into the playoffs now.
And just the consistency they've been with, every year. I think they're up to, 14 or 15 consecutive years they've made the playoffs. And with a region full of whatever it is, 36, 38 teams, and only 7 make the playoffs, and that's up. It used to only be 6, and I think before that it was maybe even only 5 at times. Mm-hmm. To have that consistency, to be one of the top 5 or 6 teams out of that group of, upwards of 40 teams, it's incredible. I don't think you see streaks like that very often. Everybody seems to have a down year that's the thing. You can't get more than 2 losses. Even 2 losses isn't guaranteed. If they were to lose to Central Missouri today, they're probably still in, but no guarantees.
Again, there's no guarantees. Central Missouri coming in number 2, I believe, in the regional rankings. The Mules, by the way, at 10-0. Having clinched a share of that conference championship, and I think that's a big deal for them. I've had an opportunity to visit with Brooke Bowles a couple of times, the senior quarterback who was injured last year in the first game of the season, did get the red shirt, is coming back for his senior year, and it looked like things were set up for them to have a good season last year. Then he goes down, and it was not the season really that they wanted. Well, they come back. He's playing with a different deck of cards, and they have to this point run the table 10-0. Now, one game left to play, and it's a huge game. You have to think, by the way, the Mules are in. I think the Mules are in.
Definitely.
Win or lose. I think that they're going to be in the playoffs in Super Region 3. So we'll see how it all shakes out. By the way, my symmetrical mind, I kind of feel like there should be 8 teams from every Super Region in. Yeah. But 7 teams giving that top team a bye, I think that's kind of neat, and it's respectful of the season that the number 1 team in the region or the Super Regions had.
Well, yeah, because you have to think after these teams have played 11 straight weeks, that's definitely an advantage to get a week to kind of rest up and maybe get some injuries healed before you go into postseason play.
And we will be having some news, too, coming to you pretty soon about the NCAA Division II Championship in Midwest Sports Saturday. About that just a little bit later on. I'm going to have some exciting news to come up. Not in our program today, but we'll talk about this a little bit later on. Doug, as we wrap things up here, and hopefully my notes aren't flying away here in Weatherford. Midwest Sports Saturday presented today by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. A couple other games, too, that I think need to be mentioned in the NAI, and let's go to the big one from Orange City, Iowa today. Morningside undefeated, Northwestern Iowa undefeated. The GPAC is going to be represented, I think, and I don't think there's any doubt with the 16 teams that will make the NAI playoffs. Both of these teams are in. There's no question both of these teams will be in. Of course, that pushes out then, a Dordt that's had a fantastic season in the GPAC and some other schools down the line. But that's a big game going up there in Morningside. Now 15-0 last season, run the table this year, and you lose your starting quarterback from last season, you lose your best wide receiver from last year. That's okay. We'll bring in Joe Dolencheck, and he'll just continue to fire it all over the field. He's found Reed Juergensmeyer time after time. They have a running game going on, and Northwestern's going to have the handful, but they do play the game at home.
I mean, this time of year, Coach Persson talked about it a little bit and said, the game is won on the field, not necessarily in, where you laid your head the night before. But
Yeah.
I think in all sports, it's obviously having that home court advantage and the familiarity is always a big thing. But, it seems like especially in football, that's why it's so important to get, when you get into the playoffs, to have that home field advantage. But even, a big rivalry game like that to end the year, it's definitely nice to have that on your home campus.
Two other games I want to mention about the NAI as we wrap things up here from Weatherford, football games that are in our area. One of them is from the Heart of America South, the Heart South, and this one, I think the playoff implications are really there. Evangel, last week at this time of day, I would say Evangel's in, no matter what. Evangel had come in, no losses in the Heart, and were tripped up at home on Senior Day. Central Methodist came in, not only tripped them up at home on Senior Day, but the Eagles pull off a 42-7 victory over Evangel, and the Crusaders now 3-1 in the Heart South. Baker, with a couple of losses early on, well, the Wildcats now come in 4-0 in the Heart South, and they play each other today. And the winner obviously comes away with the Heart South championship. I think the loser, though, is out in this one. I didn't say the same thing about Northwestern and Morningside. I think the loser of this one is out, having then, if it's Evangel, obviously with 2 losses in the divisional play there. But Baker had a couple of losses early on, so I think you're seeing an early playoff game today taking place between Evangel and Baker.
And you never know how committees are going to evaluate teams like that, where, if a team is entering the postseason with 2 losses, but they were early in the year and they finished strong, is that weighed into consideration, or is it just, you get at this, Division II NAI, if you get early losses, you have no choice but to run the table. And it's like you said, if you got one of those games, both teams are probably going in feeling like we have to win to secure our spot. Otherwise, we had a good year, but we're not playing on.
One other game, too, and this is in your home state of Kansas, the KCAC, and Kansas Wesleyan, the Coyotes undefeated. Coyotes make it to the Final Four last year, and I've seen online some detractors about Kansas Wesleyan. Well, they didn't play anybody last year. They played a tough Langston team last year that even though Langston, coming out of the Sooner Athletic Conference in his first season to have football last year, Langston was no slouch team. Kansas Wesleyan went on to beat Dickinson State, also a very tough team as well, regardless of conference. Coyotes make it to the Final Four. A very strong team this year on both sides of the ball. Really can move the ball well. Fantastic on defense as well, shutting opponents down. They have a big game today taking on Bethel. And the Threshers really, I think they're under the radar. I think that, this is a team that's kind of been passed over a little bit on the outskirts of the top 25 here and there. But this is a big game for Kansas Wesleyan. But I think really to keep the attention for the KCAC, not cheering for one side or the other right now, I think the Coyotes need to win.
Yeah, they most definitely need to. That's, I think, historically a conference that hasn't gotten a ton of respect nationally when it comes to the playoffs, and I think it's due to probably how they've performed in the playoffs by and large. So, Kansas Wesleyan's run last year did get them, it got them, I think, a little bit of credit, but it's one of those things you have to do that year over year. You can't just be a one-hit wonder, and there's no telling how much credence they're going to get if they get knocked off. So if they go in undefeated again, putting up the numbers that they've been putting up, I think they'll have a chance to maybe make another run.
All right. Well, the competitors are getting ready to get it on the field, so we're going to wrap things up here from Weatherford. Again, please be sure, tune in tomorrow, 11 o'clock from Hayes, Kansas. We'll have a special edition of Midwest Sports Saturday. Get to visit with a friend of yours, Ryan Prickett, as well as some other folks up there. We'll talk about the football day gone by, and we'll see exactly where some of these things have shaken out. Battle of the Ravine, the big matchup there going on today in Maryville as well. And, we may even talk about, hey, how did Southwestern and Northwestern do? In all of this, we still didn't talk about Southwestern and Northwestern, and the Bulldogs taking on the Rangers in Alpha today. So
yeah, it's a busy day all around. I'll be, once our game finishes up here and, get to writing some recaps and stuff, then I'll be glued to my computer the rest of the day watching and listening to the Bulldogs and Lady Dogs in action.
I think that I may even try to make it up there if this one is done in time and we have an opportunity. Little Jolie Mack is with me on the trip today, so we may try to see some football from Alva. Doug, thank you again. Thanks so much, my friend.
Joey, we're glad to have you back in Weatherford. I know I hope we're becoming close to your top stop on the Midwest Sports Saturday
right now
journey.
It is the top spot.
Good. Well, we're glad to have you back here, and like I said, we're glad to have the soccer championship here, and looking forward to a good game here in about an hour or so.
All right, be sure and tune that in, by the way. I will be on the call for that, as well as Stephen McTeer from Weatherford up here for that. It's on the GAC Sports Network. You can tune us in on YouTube. Check it out, greatamericanconference.com, and keep all these things in mind. For Jolie McWilliams, for Doug McWilliams, for Coach Mark Persson, thanks again to him for being with us on the broadcast today. And also special thanks, as always, to our sponsor here, the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, for being a part of the Midwest Sports Saturday broadcast this season. I'm Joey McWilliams. God bless you, everyone, and have a great day.